There are moments in life that act as fault lines. Tiny, almost invisible fractures that, under enough pressure, can split your entire world in two. For most of my life, I believed that family was a safe harbor, a bedrock of unconditional love. I learned, in the most brutal way possible, that sometimes the most dangerous storms are the ones that brew within your own home, behind the smiles you trust the most. I am Elena, a 32-year-old woman, and this is not just a story of revenge. It's a story about the slow, agonizing death of an illusion, and the painful birth of a reality I was forced to accept. It is the story of how a single, devastating betrayal from my older sister, Isabel, uncovered a decade-long conspiracy and forced me to become a person I never thought I could be. To understand how it all fell apart, you must first understand how it was held together by my silence, and my sister's insatiable need to be the center of every universe. In my memory, the years before everything changed are painted in the soft, warm colors of nostalgia. They were defined by a quiet routine, a sense of order that I, as a financial analyst, found deeply comforting. My life was a series of spreadsheets and predictable outcomes, and I believed my family operated on a similar, unspoken ledger of love and mutual support. Isabel, my sister, who was 2 years my senior, was the vibrant, chaotic entry that I was always trying to balance. She was a successful event planner, a whirlwind of social energy and charisma, and I, in my quiet way, admired her. I also enabled her. I remember one particular Tuesday evening, the city lights outside my office window blurring into a watercolor painting against the dark glass. I was rehearsing the final points for a career-defining presentation, the culmination of 3 months of work. My phone buzzed on the polished desk, a frantic text from Isabel lighting up the screen. Elena, it's a catastrophe. My landlord is threatening to evict me tomorrow. I'm short on rent. Just this once, I don't know who else to turn to. A familiar weariness settled over me. It was never just this once, but the alternative, imagining my sister in distress. The ensuing family drama was always worse. Isaiah closed the laptop and transferred the $1,500 to her account. The reply came almost instantly. "Thea checks. You're a lifesaver." And that was it. No questions about my presentation. No promise to pay me back. Just a transaction, logged in the silent ledger of our sisterhood. A few days later, while scrolling through my social media feed during a lunch break, a photo stopped my thumb, mid-swipe. It was Isabel, tagged at a 5-star spa resort. A new designer handbag perched on the table next to her champagne flute. The caption read, "A little self-care is non-negotiable. Treating myself after a stressful week." A brief, hot flash of anger pricked at my conscience. It was the price of her rent, sitting on that table. But then, as always, the second wave of thought washed it away, the voice of reason. Or perhaps the voice of denial. She must have been incredibly stressed. I told myself, she works hard. She deserves it. It's not worth a fight. I liked the photo and moved on. The crack was there, but I refused to see it. The signs were never loud alarms. They were whispers in the background noise of our lives. I remember a family dinner, the air filled with the comforting aroma of my mother's roast chicken. I had gone to the kitchen to refill the water pitcher when I overheard Isabel's voice. A low, conspiratorial hiss, coming from the hallway. "The key is perception," she was saying into her phone. "As long as Mom and Dad are convinced she's too fragile to handle pressure, the arrangements will fall into place perfectly. She won't even see it coming." I froze, the cold pitcher in my hand. Arrangements fragile. Just then, she turned the corner and saw me. Her face, for a split second, was a mask of cold calculation. Then, it melted into her signature, dazzling smile. "Oh, there you are, just dealing with a demanding client," she said, ending the call with a breezy, "Talk later." She took the pitcher from my hand, her touch light and dismissive. "You looked lost in thought," she added with a little laugh. And because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was too terrifying to consider, I let her. I smiled back and told myself I had misheard. This was the carefully constructed piece of our family. And for 18 years, I had been its primary architect. But every foundation has its breaking point. Mine arrived on the evening of my 18th birthday. For the first time in a long time, the day felt truly mine. My parents had thrown a beautiful party in our backyard. The air was warm, smelling of cut grass and cake. My friends were there. My family was celebrating me. And for a few precious hours, I wasn't just the quiet, responsible younger sister. I was the star. The moment came to cut the cake. It was a magnificent, three-tiered creation, glowing under the string lights my father had hung. Everyone gathered around, singing. I remember the look on my mother's face. Pure, uncomplicated joy. I picked up the silver knife, my heart swelling with a happiness so simple it felt profound. As the knife touched the frosting, a blood-curdling shriek ripped through the cheerful melody. "Isabel!" She clutched her chest, her eyes wide with a theatrical terror. I can't breathe," she gasped. Her voice, a hoarse whisper that commanded the attention of every single person in the yard. She staggered dramatically before collapsing onto the grass, her body curling into a fetal position. Chows erupted. My father shouted her name. My mother rushed to her side, her face pale with panic. The singing stopped. The party stopped. My birthday stopped. Someone called for an ambulance. As the paramedics surrounded my sister, performing their checks, I stood frozen by the cake. The candles had begun to melt, their tiny flames flickering in the sudden, heavy silence. And through the haze of fear and confusion, a cold, clear thought surfaced, as sharp and chilling as a shard of ice. She isn't hurt. In that moment, watching the perfectly executed performance, I knew this wasn't a medical emergency. It was an assassination of a memory. And it was only the beginning. The aftermath of my 18th birthday party was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. And I was its unwilling student. Isabel was released from the hospital a few hours later, the doctors finding absolutely nothing wrong with her, aside from what they vaguely termed mild dehydration. The official family narrative, however, was a very different story. It was a story of a brave, fragile Isabel, whose delicate health had unfortunately, tragically, collapsed at a moment of high emotion. My ruined party was never mentioned. It became an inconvenient detail, collateral damage in the grand drama of my sister's mysterious ailment. I tried to confront her once. A few days later, I found her in her room, looking perfectly healthy, scrolling through her phone. I kept my voice low, my words measured. "Isabel, we need to talk about my birthday." She looked up, her expression a careful blank slate. "What about it?" she asked, her tone laced with a feigned confusion. When I pressed, suggesting that her collapse had felt intentional, she deployed her arsenal with chilling precision. First came the tears, then the accusations. "I can't believe you would think that," she sobbed, her voice trembling. I was in pain. I was terrified. "And all you can think about is your stupid party. Why do you always have to be so selfish?" Saw dramatic. My parents, drawn by the noise, entered the room just in time to see her tears. They immediately sided with her, wrapping their arms around their vulnerable daughter while giving me looks of deep disappointment. I was told to be more compassionate, more understanding. I was told to apologize, and I did. The apology tasted like ash in my mouth. For years, that was the pattern, a quiet submission to a narrative that I knew was false, all for the sake of a fragile peace. I went off to college, built a career, and kept a careful, cordial distance. The incidents became less frequent, but the underlying dynamic remained I would achieve something, and Isabel would find a way to subtly diminish it. I got a major promotion, and she would tell our parents she was worried. I was working too hard and neglecting my health. The story of my fragility, my instability, it was a slow-acting poison. She dripped into the foundations of our family over the course of a decade. The next major fault line appeared, as they so often do, around a wedding. Her wedding. When Isabel announced her engagement to a successful and genuinely kind lawyer named David, I was truly happy for her. I saw it as a chance for a new beginning, a hope that marriage and maturity might sand down her sharp edges. I threw myself into the role of the supportive sister, the maid of honor. I helped her choose a venue, listened to endless debates about floral arrangements, and feigned excitement over guest lists. Then came the final act of betrayal, the one that would shatter the illusion for good. The wedding was a lavish affair at a country estate, a testament to Isabel's skill as an event planner and her fiancé's wealth. It was a perfect day. As I stood watching my sister at the altar, radiant in her designer gown, a strange thought occurred to me. This was it. This was the pinnacle of her life. The ultimate validation. Every eye was on her. She had won. And a cold, sinking feeling told me that it wasn't enough. For her to truly win, I had to lose. As she prepared to read her vows, her voice clear and triumphant, my own long-planned performance began. It was a cruel echo of my 18th birthday, a mirror held up to our own dark artistry. My breath hitched. My hand flew to my temple as if warding off a sudden, blinding headache. I swayed on my feet, my eyes fluttering shut. I didn't shriek or cry out. It was a silent, desperate collapse, a body simply giving up. I crumpled to the floor. The reaction was instantaneous, a collective gasp from the guests. David, her fiancé, stopped his vows mid-sentence, his face etched with alarm. The carefully orchestrated perfection of the ceremony shattered into 1,000 pieces of raw, human concern. I had stolen her spotlight, not with a bang, but with a whisper. The true revelation, however, came later. After being rushed away by concerned family members and revived with a glass of water, I retreated to a quiet room to recover. My phone, which I had left behind, was brought to me, and on its screen was the evidence of my sister's true soul. It began with one message, and then two, then a deluge. 73 messages in total. Not one of them asked if I was okay. Not one showed a flicker of concern. They were a torrent of pure, undiluted rage, a viper's nest of accusations. You ruined my day. You couldn't let me have one thing. You are a pathetic, attention-seeking child. I will never, ever forgive you for this. And then, the line that burned itself into my memory, the one that would become the catalyst for everything that followed. You should have just endured it and stayed standing so you didn't ruin my wedding. I sat there in the quiet, opulent room, the muffled sounds of the resumed celebration a world away. I read the words over and over, each one a nail in the coffin of the sister I had tried to love. The pain wasn't a hot, angry flush. It was a cold, creeping numbness. It was the feeling of a surgeon confirming a terminal diagnosis. There was no hope left. In my hand, I held the proof. The proof that this was never about jealousy. It was about erasure. And I finally understood that if I didn't fight back, she would continue until there was nothing left of me. The girl who apologized for her ruined birthday party was gone forever. And in her place, a strategist was born. The hours that followed felt like suspended animation. The world outside the room, the music, the laughter. The clinking glasses was an echo from a life that was no longer mine. Inside, there was only the cold, blue light of the phone screen and the 73 messages that had redrawn the map of my entire existence. The pain was immense, but it was a strangely clarifying pain. It burned away all the excuses, all the hopeful delusions, all the years I had spent trying to find a version of my sister worth loving. All that remained was the stark, ugly truth. My first move was not born of anger, but of a cold, calculated strategy that seemed to rise from some dormant part of my soul. Me fingers, steady now, moved across the screen. I did not engage. I did not retaliate. I crafted a response designed to feed my sister's greatest weakness, her arrogance. I typed, Isabel, I am so deeply sorry that my health issue cast a shadow on your perfect day. I hope you and David can still enjoy your honeymoon. Wishing you all the happiness. I sent it. It was a message of surrender. An act of feigned submission so complete that I knew she would believe it. She would read it, smirk, and dismiss me as the same weak, apologetic little sister she had always been able to control. She would go on her honeymoon believing she had won the war. She had no idea I was just beginning to plan my first battle. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair by the window, watching the dawn creep over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gray and bruised purple. The sadness didn't disappear. In that moment, it simply crystallized into a single, unshakable purpose. The years of being told I was too sensitive, too emotional, too fragile, suddenly clicked into place. It wasn't random cruelty. It was a narrative, carefully constructed, piece by piece. The ruined birthday, the constant undermining of my achievements, her feigned concern for my mental health. It was all evidence in a case she had been building against me my entire life. The question was no longer if she was my enemy, but why her campaign was so methodical. My mind kept returning to David, her new husband, the man who had looked so alarmed when I fell. He was a lawyer, a man trained to see past performances and into the fine print. He had to have seen something. The thought of contacting him felt like a violation of some unspoken code. But the rules had changed. I was no longer playing the same game. With trembling hands, I found his number. I wrote and deleted a dozen drafts before finally sending a simple, direct message. David, this is Elena. I realize the timing is beyond inappropriate, and for that I apologize. But the messages Isabel sent me after the ceremony have raised some deeply disturbing questions. I keep thinking about a comment you once made to my parents about the prenuptial agreement. If you would be willing to speak with me, in the strictest confidence, I would be immensely grateful. He responded within the hour. We met 2 days later in a quiet, anonymous coffee shop halfway between our cities. He looked exhausted, the joy of a newlywed completely absent from his eyes. He confirmed he had seen the messages. I've never seen a display of such cruelty, he said, shaking his head. When I confronted her, she tried to convince me you had a history of this, of making everything about yourself. He then told me what I needed to know. Elena, in our prenup negotiations, she was fixated on one area, future inheritances. Specifically, yours. She tried to insert a clause that would grant her significant administrative power over any assets you might receive, citing your, and these were her words, history of emotional instability. It was the single most predatory legal maneuver I had ever witnessed. I struck it down immediately, but I never forgot it. His words were the key, unlocking a cascade of buried memories, the half-overheard phone call about arrangements, the old letter from a lawyer my parents had dismissed. It all pointed to one thing: money. That night, I drove to my parents' house. I told them I was looking for some old childhood photo albums. I went down into the basement, the air thick with the smell of dust and time. There, in a corner, was a stack of old file boxes belonging to my grandmother, who had passed away 5 years prior. For hours, I sifted through old papers, tax returns, and letters. And then I found it, a thick, leather-bound folder with the name of a prestigious estate law firm embossed on the front. My hands shook as I opened it. The language was dense, full of legal jargon. But my work as a financial analyst had trained me for this. My eyes scanned the pages, and then they landed on the title, The Serenity Trust. It was a multi-million-dollar trust fund, established by my grandmother. My breath caught in my throat. I read on. My grandmother's loving words reaching out from beyond the grave. Speaking of my steadfast character, my quiet wisdom, and my responsible soul. It was why she had named me, Elena, as the primary beneficiary and sole trustee, with the funds to be fully dispersed on my 35th birthday. And then I saw the final, damning page. It was a notarized addendum, a log of inquiries, and there it was, in black and white. An inquiry logged just 3 months after my grandmother's funeral. From Isabel Vance, granddaughter, requesting a full copy of the trust's terms. She had known for 5 years. She had known the gaslighting, the sabotage, the carefully crafted narrative of my fragility. It wasn't just sibling rivalry. It was a cold, calculated, long-term strategy to have me declared mentally unfit to manage my own inheritance. It was attempted grand larceny disguised as family dysfunction. I closed the folder, the leather cool beneath my fingertips. The girl who cried over a ruined birthday was gone. The woman who held that folder in her hands knew exactly what she had to do. The trust was named Serenity. What a bitter, perfect irony. My path forward would bring anything but. The 2 weeks that followed my discovery in the basement were the quietest and most focused of my life. The rage and the grief did not vanish. But I compartmentalized them, storing them away like old files. My analyst's mind took over. My apartment, usually a haven of cozy blankets and fiction novels, transformed into a war room. The dining table disappeared under a sea of bank statements, old emails, and legal precedents. I created spreadsheets, color-coded and cross-referenced, tracing the flow of money from my parents' accounts to Isabel's for the past 10 years. A vacation here, a business loan there, a down payment for a car she couldn't afford. It formed a staggering mosaic of manipulation and entitlement, totaling over $150,000. All the while, I watched Isabel's honeymoon unfold on social media. There she was, smiling serenely on a white sand beach in the Maldives. Her new husband at her side. Each post, with its carefully curated caption about new beginnings and true happiness, was a fresh twist of the knife. But now, it was also a data point. She was at the apex of her victory, drunk on her own success. And that made her predictable. She believed I was a non-entity, a problem that had been solved. She had no idea I was an analyst. And she was my new, all-consuming project. My first move was timed to perfection. I waited until the 9th day of her 14-day trip. I wanted her to be relaxed, complacent, and far from home. She would be sitting by an infinity pool, scrolling through her own perfect photos. When a notification would slide onto her screen, it wouldn't be a like or a comment. It would be an email, arriving with the sterile click of a closing deadbolt. The subject line was designed to be both innocuous and unnerving. Formal inquiry regarding inter-family financial transfers, the Serenity Trust. I could picture her perfectly, her brow furrowing in mild annoyance. She would open it, expecting some bureaucratic formality. The language inside was dense, polite, and utterly impersonal. It was a formal notice from the trust legal team, stating that, as part of a routine beneficiary review, a full accounting of all significant financial gifts or loans from our parents to their heirs over the past decade was required. It requested that she provide full documentation for her records within 30 business days. I knew she had no such documentation. They were never loans, they were acquisitions. She would read it, perhaps roll her eyes at the inconvenience, and dismiss it as a problem for later. But the email was only the first part of a two-pronged strike. The real mechanism was already in motion. The following morning, as I had predicted, my phone rang. It was Isabel. "Hey," she began, her voice a little too casual. "Weirdest thing. I just got this bizarre, super formal email from Grandma's lawyers. Something about an audit. Do you know what that's all about?" I took a sip of my morning coffee, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment. "Good morning, Isabel. I hope you're having a wonderful honeymoon." My voice was calm, level, and utterly devoid of the warmth she was used to. "I've been getting my own financial affairs in order. The estate lawyers are simply performing their due diligence. There was a pause. I could hear the faint sound of ocean waves on her end of the line. What does getting your affairs in order even mean? She pressed. A hint of irritation in her voice. It sounds like a formal audit. It just means ensuring every asset is properly accounted for before any future distributions. I replied, using the kind of corporate language she detested. You, of all people, should appreciate the importance of good planning. I have to go now. I have a meeting, and I hung up, leaving her with a dial tone and a disquieting sense of a shift in power. She wouldn't understand what had happened, but she would feel it. The ground beneath her feet was no longer stable. The final piece of my plan was reliant on her predictable arrogance. I knew that the legal notice, combined with my cold dismissal, would needle her. She would feel an impulse to reassert her dominance, to prove that she was still in control, that nothing had changed. And the easiest way for her to do that was to spend money she didn't have. The scene, as it was described to me later, was exactly as I had pictured. It was their last day. Isabel decided they needed a honeymoon souvenir and led David into a high-end luxury boutique. She selected a ridiculously expensive watch, a companion piece to the one she had bought with my rent money years ago. At the counter, she presented her credit card with a flourish, the supplementary card linked to our father's primary account. Her personal line of endless, unearned credit. The cashier, a young woman with a polite, professional smile, swiped the card. There was a moment of silence as the machine processed. The smile on the cashier's face tightened slightly. "I'm so sorry." "Ma'am?" she said, her voice low. "It seems the card has been declined." Isabel's own smile faltered. "That's impossible," she snapped. "Try it again." The cashier obliged. "Declined." The machine chirped again. This time a little louder. A flush of hot, red humiliation crept up Isabel's neck. Other customers were beginning to notice. Flustered, she pulled out her phone to open her personal banking app, intending to transfer the funds herself. But as the app loaded, a stark, red banner flashed across the top of the screen. In bold, unforgiving letters. It read, "Account frozen pending financial review." The blood drained from her face. This was not a glitch. It was not a mistake. Her mind replayed the sterile language of the lawyer's email, the cold, detached tone of my voice on the phone. And in that moment of searing public embarrassment, she finally understood. This wasn't bureaucracy. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a meticulously planned, precisely executed, and devastatingly effective attack. And it had been launched by the one person she had written off as a permanent casualty in her victorious life. She stood there, frozen in the opulent boutique, the $20,000 watch feeling like a lead weight in her hand. As the world she had built on lies and manipulation began to shudder and crack around her, the return from the Maldives was not the triumphant homecoming Isabel had envisioned. The sun-kissed glow was replaced by a pallor of cold panic. Her world, once a playground, funded by an endless supply of credit and goodwill, had suddenly been reduced to the stark reality of a frozen bank account and a ticking legal clock. Her first instinct, honed by a lifetime of practice, was to run not to a lawyer, but to her primary, enablers, our parents. She stormed into their house in a tempest of manufactured tears and righteous indignation. I wasn't there to witness it, but my mother's subsequent phone call painted a vivid picture. "I don't know what's gotten into your sister," my mother sobbed into the phone. Her voice laced with the familiar anxiety Isabel was so skilled at inducing. "She says you've frozen her accounts, that you're accusing her of stealing Elena. This has to stop. You're tearing this family apart." Isabel's performance, I'm sure, was worthy of an award. She would have framed my actions as a petty, vindictive tantrum, a jealous lashing out from the spurned little sister. She was the victim. I was the aggressor. It was the same script she had used for 34 years. But this time, I was not participating in the play. I let my mother finish, my own voice remaining calm and steady when I finally spoke. "Mom," I said, my tone, leaving no room for negotiation. I love you, but this is no longer a simple family disagreement. This is a formal legal and financial matter concerning Grandma's estate. I have hired professionals to handle it, and they are doing their job. Any concerns Isabel has, she can, and should, direct to them. I will not be discussing the details with you or Dad over the phone. There was a stunned silence on the other end. She was expecting tears. Arguments, a familiar emotional battlefield. I had given her a corporate boardroom. I had refused to be manipulated. The conversation ended with my mother's confused and frustrated sighs. Isabel's oldest and most reliable weapon, emotional blackmail, had just misfired. This new reality sent Isabel into a deeper state of panic. The 30-day deadline to provide documentation was approaching. With her emotional appeals failing, she was forced to confront the fact that she had to produce evidence that simply did not exist. So, she decided to create it. It was a move born of equal parts desperation and breathtaking arrogance. I can picture her now, alone in her chic home office late at night. The glow of her monitor casting long shadows on the wall. She would be frantically searching online for loan agreement templates and business investment proposal examples. With the clumsy haste of an amateur, she began to construct her fiction. She fabricated proposals for startup businesses that were never started, drafted loan agreements for personal emergencies that were actually luxury vacations. She painstakingly backdated every document, her keystrokes a frantic tap dance against the looming deadline. Her final, most reckless act was the forgery. To account for the largest sum, a transfer of $25,000. She drafted a formal loan document between herself and our father. But a document like that needed a signature. Undeterred, she found an old birthday card from him, scanned his familiar, looping signature, and digitally pasted it onto the bottom of her fraudulent contract. In her mind, she was being clever, resourceful. She was a victim fighting back against an unjust attack. She believed no one would ever look closely enough to notice the slight pixelation around the edges, the unnatural perfection of the placement. She packaged her collection of lies into a neat digital folder and sent it to the trust's legal team with a defiant sense of relief. She had called my bluff, but she had fundamentally misjudged her opponent. I was not playing a game of emotional poker. I was executing a financial analysis. And the professionals I had hired were not sentimental family members, they were forensic accountants. Her package of lies didn't just raise red flags, it set off a 5-alarm fire. The mismatched fonts, the inconsistent dating, the generic template language, it was laughably transparent. The forged signature was the final, fatal error. The trust lawyers, with my express permission, forwarded the most egregious document, the forged loan agreement, to an independent handwriting expert. They also forwarded a copy to David, her estranged husband, for his professional legal opinion. The gears of a machine far larger and more impersonal than a family squabble began to turn. Isabel was feeling a flicker of her old confidence returning when the next email arrived. It wasn't from the family trust. The sender was the Cybercrime and Fraud Division of the local district attorney's office. The subject line was a death knell to the life she had known, notice of formal criminal investigation into suspected wire fraud and forgery. She had been trying to patch a hole in the dam. And in her panic, she had dynamited the entire structure. Her desperate attempt to cover a civil matter had birthed a criminal one. I imagine her staring at the screen, the words, criminal investigation, blurring before her eyes. The game had irrevocably changed. She was no longer just at risk of losing her inheritance. For the first time in her protected, privileged life, Isabel was facing the possibility of losing her freedom. A formal notice of a criminal investigation is not a whisper, it is a battering ram. It demolishes denial, shatters illusions, and leaves only the hard, ugly framework of reality behind. When news of the district attorney's inquiry reached my parents, the carefully constructed narrative that Isabel had spent a lifetime weaving finally began to unravel. It was my father who called me. The anger and confusion that had colored his voice for weeks were gone, replaced by a deep, somber gravity that chilled me to the bone. "Elena," he began, his voice heavy, labored. "We received a call From an investigator at the D.A.'s office. He asked me to verify my signature on a loan document for $25,000. A document your sister submitted. He paused, and I could hear his ragged breath on the other end of the line. I told him the truth. I told him I never signed any such thing. I never even saw it before. Another pause. This one longer. Heavier. Now, you are going to tell me what is really going on. No more lawyers. No more evasions. I need the whole truth from you. Now, this was the moment the burden of proof shifted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say, "I told you so." I simply replied, "I will send you an email. Dad, it will have a single, password-protected link. The password is Grandma's middle name." I paused, then added, "The truth is all in there, when you're ready to see it." In that secure digital folder, I placed everything: the full text of the Serenity Trust, the meticulously detailed audit of Isabel's 10-year financial drain, and scans of all 73 of her hateful text messages from the wedding. I had built my case, and now it was time for the jury of two to deliberate while the storm raged in my parents' home, and a different kind of collapse was happening in Isabel's professional life. Her entire career as a high-end event planner was built on a carefully polished image of success, taste, and, above all, trustworthiness. A criminal investigation is a poison from which such a reputation rarely recovers. Her downfall was swift and brutal. The final blow came from her most prestigious client, the annual Benefactors Gala for the city's largest children's hospital, an event she had overseen for 5 consecutive years. An emergency board meeting was called. I imagine Isabel walking into that boardroom. Her professional smile stretched taut across her face, trying to project an aura of calm control. The board chair, a formidable woman in her 60s, did not mince words. "Isabel," she began, her eyes fixed on the laptop in front of her. "We've been made aware through our legal counsel of a pending criminal investigation into matters of fraud and forgery. As you know, our organization's reputation is paramount." The chair looked up, her gaze cold and unwavering. "Therefore, the board has voted unanimously. We are invoking the morality clause in your contract and terminating our agreement, effective immediately. Humiliation is a powerful acid. To be dismissed so clinically, so publicly, was a professional execution. She had lost more than a client. She had lost her identity as the city's golden girl. She was now a liability. At home, the verdict was in. My father, a man whose entire moral compass was built on the principles of honesty and hard work, had spent 2 days locked in his study with the contents of my email. My mother, I later learned, had tried to defend Isabel, weaving excuses about stress and sibling rivalry. But there is no excuse for forgery. There is no compassionate explanation for the venom in those text messages. The final confrontation took place in the living room, where we had celebrated so many Christmases. Isabel was there, summoned by our parents, likely expecting them to present a united front, to announce how they would fix this for her, as they always had. Instead, my father stood before her, his face like granite. In his hand, he held a printed copy of the fraudulent loan agreement. "Did you do this?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you take a card I sent you for your birthday and steal my name to commit a crime?" Cornered, with no more lies to tell, Isabel finally broke. But it was not a breakdown of remorse. It was a volcanic eruption of pure, narcissistic rage that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. "Yes," she shrieked, her face contorted in a mask of ugly fury. "I did it, and I would do it again. You never saw me. It was always her Saint Elena, the quiet one, the responsible one, Grandma's favorite. That trust was my birthright. It was my due for having to live in her shadow my entire life. You owe me that money for what you put me through." My father didn't flinch. He just stood there, watching this stranger who was his daughter. And in his eyes, I was told, was a look of profound and devastating clarity. He was finally seeing the real Isabel, not the curated performance he had chosen to believe in for 34 years. He waited until her screaming subsided into ragged sobs. And then he delivered his judgment. We didn't love her more. Isabel, he said, his voice cracking with a pain that was awful to hear. We failed her. We failed her every single time we protected you from the consequences of your own actions. He placed the forged document on the coffee table. We are done. We cannot protect you from this. We cannot lie for you. We cannot fix this for you. He turned away from her. A final, heartbreaking dismissal. You are on your own. My mother, for the first time, did not rush to comfort her. She stood by my father, her face a mess of tears and dawning horror. And in that moment, Isabel was truly, utterly alone, abandoned by the two people who had served as her willing accomplices and human shields her entire life. Her allies had fallen, leaving her completely exposed to the storm she had created. In the desolate landscape of Isabel's new reality, stripped of her allies and facing the cold machinery of the law, a single, desperate instinct remained self-preservation. She was a cornered animal, and it was then that I extended a hand. It was not a hand of mercy, but the final, crucial component of a carefully constructed trap. My lawyer contacted hers with an offer. It was framed as an opportunity for reconciliation, a path to avoid the ugliest of outcomes. The terms were simple. Isabel was to attend a final, formal mediation at the law firm. There, in front of the family, she would make a full, recorded confession of her actions, from the financial manipulation to the forgery. In return, she would be required to sign a legally binding document, relinquishing any and all future claims to the Serenity Trust and any part of our parents' estate. If she agreed to these terms, I would submit a formal victim impact statement to the district attorney's office, attesting that this was a family matter that had been resolved internally and recommending the utmost leniency to her lawyers. It sounded like a generous off-ramp. To Isabel, it must have sounded like a miracle, a chance to avoid jail time, to perhaps, one day, slither her way back into our parents' good graces. It was a sliver of hope, and she clung to it with the desperation of a drowning woman. She agreed immediately. The day before the scheduled mediation, she made her final, predictable move. She called our mother. I was there when the call came, sitting in my parents' quiet kitchen. I had prepared them for this, explaining that Isabel's final act would be an attempt to fracture their resolve. My mother looked at me, her eyes filled with a sad, newfound strength, and nodded. She answered the phone and put it on speaker, placing it on the table between us. My own phone was already on, its recording app silently active. Isabel's voice was a broken, this bit at this sob. Mom, she cried, the performance as flawless as ever. Mom, you have to help me. I'm so scared. I know I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I was just so scared of losing you and Dad. I saw how much you worried about Elena. And I thought if I could just be more successful, more in control, I could take care of everyone. I never meant for it to become criminal. You know, I would never really hurt anyone. You have to believe me. Mom, you have to tell them that it was a masterful blend of confession and excuse-making. An admission of fact wrapped in a denial of intent. It was the same tactic she had used her entire life. And for the first time, it had no effect. My mother listened, her face a mask of sorrow. Isabel, she said, to her voice quiet but firm. The time for stories is over. Tomorrow, you just have to tell the truth. She ended the call, leaving Isabel's sobs hanging in the silent kitchen air. I stopped the recording. I now had the final piece of evidence I needed, a confession, not of remorse, but of narcissism. The boardroom at the law firm was a sterile, intimidating space of glass and polished mahogany. Isabel arrived first. With her lawyer, she looked haggard, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes. She was expecting a tense, emotional family meeting. What she walked into was an execution. One by one, the rest of us filed in. First, me, then our parents, their faces grim and resolute. Then, to Isabel's visible shock, David, her now ex-husband, who took a seat next to my lawyer. Finally, a court stenographer sat down at a small desk in the corner, her presence turning the mediation into a formal deposition. Isabel's face went from hopeful to ashen. This was not a reconciliation. It was an arraignment. Milavier, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright, began. She did not speak of forgiveness or family. She spoke of evidence. With the cold precision of a surgeon, she began to lay out the entire, sordid history of Isabel's campaign against me. On a large screen at the end of the boardroom, a presentation began. First, the financial audit, a damning spreadsheet detailing the $150,000, itemized and dated. Next, a slide showing the forged loan document side by side with the forensic expert's sworn affidavit declaring it a crude and obvious fabrication. Then, the 73 text messages appeared on screen, their venomous words filling the silent room. With each slide, Isabel seemed to shrink in her chair. Finally, Ms. Albright looked toward me. And now, a final piece of evidence, recorded less than 24 hours ago. She pressed a key, and the sound of Isabel's sobbing, desperate phone call to her mother filled the boardroom. Her own voice, pleading, lying, and excusing, became the closing argument against her. When the recording clicked off, the silence was absolute. There was nowhere left for her to hide. I looked at my sister, truly looked at her, for the first time without a filter of hope or obligation. And I finally spoke. My voice was not triumphant. It was not angry. It was the calm, quiet voice of a conclusion being reached. This was never about the money. Isabel, I said, it was about the truth. For your entire life, you have used my love for our family and my desire for peace as a weapon against me. I leaned forward slightly, making sure she could see that there was no hatred in my eyes. Only a profound and final certainty. The game is over. You didn't lose today. You lost years ago. The moment you decided that my silence meant I was weak. Ms. Albright slid a thick document across the polished table. This is your confession and your permanent, irrevocable relinquishment of any claim, present or future, to any Vance family assets. She stated, "Sign it." Isabel's lawyer whispered frantically to her. But she wasn't listening. She was staring at me. "The deal," she croaked, her voice barely audible. "The D? A? There is no deal." "Miss," Albright said flatly, "a full copy of this presentation, including the recording you just heard, was delivered to the district attorney's office this morning. This document is not a negotiation. It is simply a formality." The finality of it settled over the room. There was no escape. No last-minute trick. Only the cold. The hard weight of a bill that had finally come due. She looked at our father's stony face, our mother's tears, David's pitying gaze, and my calm resolve. She saw no allies, no escape routes, only the end of the line. Her hand, shaking, reached for the pen. Checkmate. The signing of the confession was not a moment of triumph. There was no cathartic release, no swell of victorious music. There was only the quiet scratch of a pen on paper in a room thick with the ghosts of what could have been. When it was done, Isabel didn't look at any of us. She simply stood up, her shoulders slumped, and walked out of the room, leaving the architecture of our family in ruins behind her. We did not watch her go. We each sat with our own piece of the wreckage. The year that followed was a year of quiet reconstruction. I sold my old apartment, a place that held too many memories of late-night phone calls and anxious worry. I used a portion of the trust, my grandmother's legacy of serenity, to establish a charitable foundation in her name. It focuses on providing financial literacy education for young women who have aged out of the foster care system, women who, like me, had to learn to be their own safe harbor. My new office is a bright, airy space overlooking a small city park. Sometimes, in between reviewing grant proposals and mentoring sessions, I find myself looking out the window, watching the seasons change. The tightness that used to live permanently in my chest is gone. It has been replaced by a quiet, centered strength. I have learned to turn the poison of my past into medicine for someone else's future. It is a profound and satisfying alchemy. As for Isabel, the law is an impersonal force, faced with an insurmountable mountain of evidence. She accepted a plea bargain. She pleaded guilty to felony fraud and served 6 months in a low-security correctional facility. She is now halfway through a 5-year probation period. I have heard, through a distant family acquaintance, that she is working as an administrative assistant for a logistics company on the other side of the state. We have not spoken a single word since that day in the boardroom. I do not hate her. I do not wish her ill. I simply do not think of her at all. She has been excised from my life. A necessary amputation to save the whole. The relationship with my parents has been the most complex part of the recovery. It is a delicate, fragile thing, being rebuilt, piece by painful piece, on a new foundation of brutal honesty. The old dynamic of enabler, victim, and antagonist is gone, and we are all still learning how to exist without it. The phone calls are less frequent, but more meaningful. The conversations are cautious, but for the first time, they are real. Last week, my mother called. Her voice, once so certain, now carried a permanent note of tentativeness. "Elena," she said, after a few moments of small talk. "I was just calling to see how you are." I looked out my window at the green leaves of the oak tree in the park. "I'm doing well, Mom," I said, and the words were true. The foundation is sponsoring its first scholarship recipient this fall. I'm really proud of that. There was a long pause on her end, and I could hear the unspoken weight of what she wanted to ask. "That's wonderful. Dear," she finally said, her voice fragile. "Your father and I, we were wondering if you might like to come for dinner soon, just the 3 of us." The invitation hung in the air. A bridge offered across a vast canyon. The old Elena would have said yes instantly. Eager to soothe, to please, to rebuild, but the old Elena was gone. I thought for a moment before I answered, not out of anger, but out of respect for the new boundaries I had fought so hard to build. "I appreciate that, Mom. I really do." I took a breath, but maybe not just yet. I think I still need a little more time. It was not a rejection, but it was not an acceptance. It was the truth. And for the first time, she seemed to understand. "Okay, dear," she said softly. "We understand. We'll be here when you're ready." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone. There was no guilt, only a quiet sense of peace. The scar from Isabel's betrayal would always be a part of me, a reminder of the fault line that split my world in two. But it no longer ached. It was a part of my story, not the end of it. I had survived the storm, and in the quiet aftermath, I had finally found my own serenity. It wasn't the absence of conflict or the illusion of a perfect family. It was the strength to stand firm in my own truth, and the courage to build a new dawn on my own terms. The story of Elena and Isabel is a deeply painful reminder that sometimes the deepest betrayals come from within the very walls we believe are meant to protect us. The primary lesson here is not one of vengeance, but one of self-preservation. It teaches us that trust, once shattered by a loved one, can create wounds that may never fully heal in the same way. True strength, as Selena discovered, isn't always found in loud confrontations, but in the quiet, calculated resolve to reclaim your own truth and let the consequences of others' actions speak for themselves. We feel a profound empathy for anyone who has had to face the agonizing choice between family loyalty and their own well-being. If this story resonates with you, please know that setting boundaries to protect your mental peace and self-respect is not an act of selfishness. It is a necessary and courageous act of survival. You are not responsible for the actions of others, but you are responsible for protecting your own serenity. This brings us to a difficult question. What would you do if you were in Elena's position? Where do you draw the line between forgiveness and enabling toxic behavior within a family? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might be the one someone else needs to read today. Story 2. When I say brutally, I mean brutally. My girlfriend Jenna and I have been dating for a little over 2 years. I'm a veterinarian, and we met at my office. She had recently moved to the city and brought her dog in for an ear infection. We started talking, and what should have been a 15-minute appointment turned into an hour-long conversation. I've never been so infatuated with a woman before. And before Jenna, I was living the bachelor lifestyle. I trust Jenna, but I'd be bold-faced lying if I said that her relationship with Dylan doesn't bother me at all. I don't get angry with her or fight over it. She's reassured me that they've been friends their entire lives and have never had any sexual relationship. I'm secure, and I'm not crazy. So I accept that they are. Just stay single forever. Even though that lifestyle of nothing but casual flings was getting really old and empty, the friends and have tried to buddy up with him as well. He has been to the city 3 times and is a cool guy, but he doesn't seem to like me much. Jenna claims he's just protective. But in my opinion, that comes off as jealousy more than protectiveness. Jenna recently graduated from graduate school this spring, but she's had a really difficult time finding a job. We've lived together for a year, and I've been understanding that she can't help pay rent and other expenses right now. I'm very financially secure, so it isn't a problem. But I'm cautious not to become. She texted me at work on Monday to tell me she got a job. A job she really, really wanted and had to go through some pretty grueling interviews to get. I was so happy and proud of her that I decided to leave the rest of the day at the office up to my discretion. I just think it's important for everyone to have this kind of independence. So, without being pushy, I've told her that she just needs to start paying half of the expenses once she secures a job. I bought her favorite liquor, got her a bunch of her favorite Chinese takeout, and bought her flowers. I also bought her a nice necklace that she had seen at a store a few weeks prior. It wasn't very fancy, but it had a shark on it. And that woman is completely obsessed with anything related to sharks. I had hidden it in the basement and thought I'd give it to her soon. And I completely surprised her with tea once she had forgotten she had seen it in the store. I got home and entered the side entrance to the store without telling Jenna. It took me a few dull minutes to realize that she was laughing about our sex life. But when I climbed the basement stairs and opened the door, I could hear her talking on the phone. Normally, I wouldn't stop to listen, but she was laughing uncontrollably, like she was belly laughing. And I thought I'd wait for her to get off the phone before I surprised her. She was talking to Dylan, but I didn't know that they talked at least once a week. I feel bad every time I eat a baby carrot around him because it must be traumatizing to watch me chomping down on something the same size as him. It would be cute if it didn't suck so much. His body is amazing as long as he keeps his boxers on. I don't really care what people on Reddit think about my member's size. But I do think it's important to say that what she was making fun of wasn't even true, which in my opinion makes it even more hurtful. I mean, I don't know about the XBF. Maybe he was a horse. But I'm just plain old average. I won't brag about it here. It's nothing to write home about. But it's also not funny. I've never felt self-conscious. But hearing her disparage me to this guy that she knows I'm worried about is just so hurtful. She also made fun of me for being beautiful, but not particularly intelligent, which isn't the case. She may have heard the basement door close, or perhaps she even saw my car driving away, because she began texting me shortly after I left, asking when I was coming home, which was Monday, and I haven't brought it up. I don't know how I think I'm still processing everything, but it's incredibly hurtful and embarrassing. I know I'm smart, gorgeous, and extremely smart, and I have an average-sized penis. Thank you very much. Damn. I love this girl. I'm not saying I'm going to forgive her. I just want to emphasize how difficult this whole situation is for me. I know I need to talk to her about it. But how can I start this conversation? I'm really hurt. And I'm not sure if I can forgive her for this TL doctor. My girlfriend made fun of me and my penis with her male friend in a very hurtful way, making me feel like a puppy who just got kicked in the face. Joking aside, I'm devastated because I was hoping to pop the question in the coming months. I don't see how I can even forgive her and follow her advice. Edit wow. Thanks everyone. I just wanted to add that I will definitely be ending my relationship with Jenna. I told 3 of my friends over beer tonight that their feelings are similar to yours. So dump her and move on quickly. I called my mother and told her about it. Yes. I told her everything. Even though it was embarrassing because we are fairly close. And I wanted to tell her the entire story. I've never heard her so upset about anything. And I bought Jenna a ring. I'll post an I really didn't expect everyone to be rooting for me like this update. I 33 meters overheard my girlfriend, 28 farads, making fun of me pretty brutally to her best friend, 27 meters. When I say brutally, I mean well-supportive Reddit strangers. I stayed strong and broke up with Jenna Thursday evening. After I do it, it's probably tomorrow, though it might take me a few days to post about it. I'm going to be pretty wrecked emotionally. Thank you again for all the comments and SL messages of support and encouragement. I'm sorry this is so long. But after a very dramatic couple of days in my life, things got pretty ugly on her end. A lot happened at the suggestion of my friend's mother, brother, and many of you. I spoke with her in a private but public setting, with the idea that someone who can be so cruel and expose herself as a liar could try to turn the tables on me by saying that I hurt her or something like that. I'd like to think she wouldn't do that. But who knows? Especially after everything that has happened is better safe than sorry. I considered simply packing up her belongings and ending things abruptly. But since we have been dating for more than 2 years, I decided that the best course of action was to calmly confront her and then listen to her if she had an explanation. Even if it didn't change my mind about ending our relationship, I wanted to hear it. So I took her to a downtown wine bar with those tiny individual booths with half curtains. She has been sugary sweet since Monday, which indicates that she either felt guilty or she dressed up really nicely. And despite everything that has happened, I can admit that she looked stunning. She was also very affectionate and kept making a lot of sexy comments about all the things she wanted to do to me later. Normally, my precious little baby carrot would have been thrilled by this. But given the circumstances, it was difficult to hear and act normal. B, she thought I might have hurt her. Or C, she simply knew I'd been acting distant and had no idea why. We sat down and got our wine. And I started talking to her about how much I've loved her and how she's the only woman I've ever felt so connected to that I open myself up to her completely and trust her. I told her that she's the only woman I've ever thought about marrying and that I've gone ring shopping for. But I didn't mention that I've already purchased a ring and that I've actually imagined having a relationship with her. She kept interrupting me over the next few years to say something or to tell me how much she loved me. I asked her directly, "Why did you make fun of me to Dylan if you love me so much?" And, as I expected, her face looked somewhat satisfied. At first, she denied it, acting as though she didn't understand, saying that Dylan knew how much she loved me and that she had never made fun of me to him. I kind of just looked at her and said, "Come on, Jenna." But she continued to deny, even after I informed her that I would be returning home early on Monday and having HT her. It was quite annoying. But I remained composed and told her that I couldn't understand why she would say such things to anyone, let alone Dylan, especially since she was lying to get at me. She denied it and pretended that I was insane, saying she loves me so much that she's not unhappy with our sex life and would never say she was complaining about my sun eyes and that she knows how intelligent and kind I am, which is why she loves me. If I hadn't heard what she said to Dylan, I would have thought she was an Oscar winner for that performance. Some commenters asked if I was certain she was referring to me when I overheard her discussing her ex-boyfriend and his dick cracking. She mentioned my name during the comparison, so I'm positive she was lying to me about it. I told her that I would drive us home and that she could take the essentials she needed. Here, dog. And my brother and his girlfriend would be at the house too. I wanted to make sure there were other people present to ensure that I let her get her belongings and didn't do anything violent or damaging. I told her that I would pack up the rest of her belongings and leave them out for her to retrieve whenever she could. She was shocked that I was really ending our relationship, and she begged me to do so. But I was stubborn and couldn't help but cry when she kept saying, "Oh," she kept asking me what she was supposed to do and where she was supposed to sleep. I told her that it wasn't really my problem anymore and that she had plenty of friends she could stay with until she gets her own place. Essentially, all of the furniture and decor is mine. She also mentioned how much she wanted to be with me forever and that she had planned to become the mother of my children someday. I own my house. And since Jenna hasn't helped with expenses by paying any rent or utilities, I wasn't too worried about kicking her out. I told her repeatedly that I am a nice guy, which is why I didn't just throw her stuff on the front lawn, change the locks, and give no explanation. Then, I swear to you, this woman dug even deeper. She said she didn't know why she said those things to Dylan. And she finally acknowledged that all of the redecorating she had done to my house was done on my dime. And the waterworks arrived. I told her that it's really sad to me if what I heard was her at her best was petty, and usually I'm above making snide remarks. But I told her that she can go back to her hometown and go live with Dylan or her nine-and-dick ex-boyfriend. It was amazing to watch how quickly those tears disappeared. Apparently I don't know how to treat women. I'm a loser. And my penis is tiny. She never truly loved me, and I was more like a friend. So she stayed with me because she didn't want to hurt me. It makes a lot of sense. If I had proposed again, she would have said no. And I am a loser and in case I didn't understand her the first time, she meant it when she said that my penis was a baby carrot and that I would die alone. I told her that dying alone is better than dying married to a cruel woman who doesn't love or respect me. She didn't mince words. She began to scream. But it was an extremely loud scream. Alarming. And then she simply booked it out of there, after calling me a disgusting pig. After paying the bill and apologizing to the waiter for the drama, I left. And Jenna was just standing outside sobbing. I know what she did was terrible. And everything she said just a few minutes earlier was terrible. But I still didn't like seeing her like that. And I didn't want to just leave her on the sidewalk, since it's already quite cold in New England. I asked her to allow me to drive her back to the house so she could get her belongings. But when she packed her bags, she agreed to leave and go stay somewhere else. We didn't talk at all in the car and talked about the awkward ride. My brother and his wife were at the house when we arrived, and his wife stayed inside while Jenna gathered some things. My brother waited outside with me, and the trip went fairly smoothly. She had a girlfriend come get her, and I got my key back from her before she left. She texted me throughout the night, ranging from sorry to sad to angry. She smashed everything when I got home. And I'm not sure if she made a spare key at some point that I didn't know about, or if she knows how to pick locks. But she managed to get into the house somehow. I didn't respond to any of them and only texted her yesterday morning to let her know that her belongings were on the porch and that she should come pick them up while I'm at work. I didn't hear from her until it was almost time for me to leave. And she sent me a very nasty text, wishing me everything bad. The only thoughtful thing she did was to lock my 2 dogs in a bedroom. I suppose, to prevent them from cutting themselves on glass or eating the food. I have 2 cars, one for daily use and an SUV for work. I use the SUV when I make house calls and may need to bring a large or exotic animal into the car. She ruined it by smashing items that are irreplaceable, tearing up furniture, clogging 2 sinks, leaving the water running, and throwing food all over the kitchen. I gave her a key to the SUV in case she ever had an emergency and needed to drive somewhere. But I forgot to bring it to the clinic, in the midst of all the drama. When I went out to check the car, she ruined the inside 2 times and spilled flour and tomato soup all over it. I guess it's more the fact that she could do something so horrible and childish. And on top of everything else, it blows my mind. Last weekend, I took her to a play with friends, and we played Monopoly one night and made up. We played our own drinking game, watched Netflix, and made love multiple times. This weekend, my house and car were destroyed, and I'm amazed at how quickly things change. It wasn't my best moment, but I was so angry that I immediately ordered 25-pound bags of baby carrots from Costco's instant delivery service and had them shipped to her friend's house. They delivered the 100-pound bags of baby carrots to Jenna within an hour. and I received a ton of interesting and offensive texts from her that night. Yes, it was petty. But the only regret, I feel like it was a waste of food. And I hope she cooks some of them or donates them. So I blocked her last night after she kept sending me nasty texts. I'm crying more than I've in a long time. And it's clear that I made the right decision. Jenna is obviously not emotionally stable or mature. And she is really cruel. And I know I do deserve better. Since Monday, I've been thinking a lot about myself as a partner and I'm going to be completely honest here, I work a lot. And I try to still make time for the people I love. I try not to bring work home with me when I've had a bad day. But sometimes I do. Jenna and I have fought about this in the past. And I've really tried to pace my days so that I can get home at a reasonable time. I've tried to leave bad days at work as much as I can. But anyone who works with a veterinarian or has had a vet knows we're always, even though my staff is amazing and capable of handling most situations, I still receive a lot of calls or texts from them when I'm on vacation or off for the day. I'm sure there have been times when Jenna felt less than ideal for my job, and I've told her as much in the past. I tried to make changes, but as far as I can recall, there's only so much I can do. Being on call for emergencies occasionally means that we have patients that we have to check on or stay with throughout the night. I have never intentionally been mean to Jenna. I have had bad days, been grumpy or absent, and we have had our share of arguments and fights, but nothing unhealthy or excessive. I really believed that we had a strong relationship and that we were both happy, and I know that I was. It's difficult to not question whether I am a letdown or whether I neglected her to the point where she felt unloved enough to act in such a way. I'm not sure, but I am aware that no matter how she treated me or how she responded to our breakup, it was completely out of character. Of course, I didn't deserve that, and that's on her. Thank you for supporting me. Reddit. It's been wonderful reading all the kind remarks and advice. TL Doctor. I broke up with Jenna Thursday night. Things didn't go well. She became nasty and ended up destroying my house. 2. And me. I've blocked her on social media and my phone. I also sent her 100 PBS of baby carrots in a moment of weakness and anger. I also filed a police report and took pictures, which I'm going to hope that insurance will cover the damages and just move on with my life. As far as the police report is concerned, it's highly unlikely that anything will come of it because I can't prove it was her. I'd also like to try to sue her in small claims court, but I'd rather not deal with her any longer.